今天是2025年9月10号，教师节，我没有什么特别的感觉，所以我们今天继续来看书吧。继续来看 China Economy。那上一章主要讲了这个经济危机对中国这个经济的影响啊，主要就是因为4万亿的刺激计划呢，使得中国可以说是平稳的度过了金融危机，但是也造成了一些很严重的问题，比如说资源上的浪费以及就并没有优化自己的产业结构啦等等。然后就到了这个习时代，然后我们今天就来讲这个习时代的早期啊，从2012年开始，它的这些所谓的经济改革是哪几个方面？那总结来说就是3个方面，第一就是反腐，第二就是这个思想上的高度control，第三呢就是说要经济改革。好，那他实际上这个作者还是蛮有意思的，他对习近平的反腐还是持较高的评价的，就是他不完全认为内疚是为了清理政治对手，实际上大部分的中国媒体都是这么认为的啊。那他认为这个反腐是对于这个提高经济运转的效率非常有必要的。好，那他这个说这个 ideology campaign 啊，就是说这个评价就很有意思，就是 for those who hoped that as China grew richer, it would also grow more open and pluralistic. This is a great disappointment. 就是说这个习近平对思想的control呢，其实是让一些人很不舒服的，不仅是国内的人很不舒服，其实也让美国的一些左派很不舒服，因为当初美国愿意让中国加入这个 WTO， 除了美国自己很想赚钱以外呢，也有一部分至少政客需要 cover 他们 face 的那一部分，就是说他们认为如果说中国变得富有了之后呢，中国会变得更民主，就会变成真正的美国的朋友。那实际上并没有海本啊，可以说是啪啪啪打脸了。但是他这个评价也是很有意思的，就是说他对这种高度的党的高度统一的控制呢，这个作者的评价其实还是挺 spicy 的。他就说while centralizing power in this way may ease the process of pushing through technocratic reforms in the short run, it is very questionable whether the kind of tightly controlled authoritarian state that Xi is building is compatible in the long run with the dynamic and innovative economy that he and other Chinese leaders say they want. 就是说高度的这个政治上的文化上的管控呢，跟这个经济上的自由发展它是不可调和的。那总体来说，这个他对这个习近平的这个改革，因为既要又要，所以说这个作者其实是不看好他的结果的。他就说，然后他讲到这个改革的一些具体的成果，那他说的，他比较肯定的就是说，这个在煤炭上面的 tax 跟electricity 的 pricing 是变得更 market control 了，这一点是没有问题的。再就是说他认为国企改革是 totally failed 的，就是并没有说让这个 it has not done so well enforcing the big inefficient state enterprises to give up their positions。知道习近平是很喜欢国企的，而且他也不太愿意触及这些红色家庭的利益，所以说国企改革是完全失败的。然后这个户口的管控也是大大的降低了这个人们的 migrate 的意愿，这也是反自由的或者说反经济增长的吧。 就是说 generally 来说呢，那这个习近平is unwilling to contemplate the bold retreats from state control that have been essential to China's impressive economic growth throughout the reform era。就是说，在邓小平跟江泽民时代呢，经济能够高速发展是因为党的放权，但是习近平是不愿放权的，所以他认为这个中国的经济增长就差不多就这样了，基本上。然后讲到这个所谓的 growth model 到底有没有改变啊？那实际上它是一个就是先说了好的部分，又说了不好的部分。总体来说呢，就是并没有什么太大的改变，而且在2015年的时候，你像东三省还有中部的一些省已经出现了非常可怕的 GDP 负增长，所以他认为这个中国的这个经济危机是不太可能避免的，而且中国的这种高速经济发展呢是在这个高速是基于这个很高的债务的，所以说是不可持续的，就跟08年美国会出现金融危机一样，这个也是会迟早到来的。OK， 那接下来这个话题也挺有意思的，叫 Can economic reforms succeed without political reforms？ 这个应该是一个很有意思的话题，大家基本上都会问这个问题，当然这个国内跟国外的这个回答是完全不一样的。我们来看看这个作者是怎么说的吧。For as long as China has tried to combine a dynamic and ever more market-driven economy with an authoritarian political system, observers from the West and numerous domestic critics have argued that this combination was unsustainable. Eventually, the argument goes China would have to change its political system to become more open and representative, or the economy would stop growing. This prediction is based on plausible precedents. In 19th century Europe, industrialization and the rise of an urban middle class led to the destruction of old aristocratic orders that the gradual emergence of representative government. In Asia after World War II, both South Korea and Taiwan had experienced rapid growth under authoritarian regimes, and then made the transition to democracy in the late 1980s and early 1990s, as their growing middle classes demanded more voice in government. And the most successful post-communist countries in East Europe, such as Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, embraced capitalism and liberal democracy together. Of the 56 economies whose per capita GDP exceeded the global average in 2013, all but 4 are at least nominally democracies, in the sense that they hold regular contested elections for the country's top leaders, in which all adult citizens can vote. The exceptions, Qatar, Equatorial Guinea, Saudi Arabia, and 一些中东国家 are all countries with small populations whose economies depend mainly on exports of oil and gas, a natural formula for authoritarian oligarchy. Among major economies, the only one other than China that is not really democratic in any meaningful sense is Russia. 其实俄罗斯的这个民主比国内还是要强一些的。It seems likely that the Communist Party's twin desires to turn China into a great economic power and to retain its own political monopoly are incompatible, and sooner or later, one of those goals must give way. So far, though, this prediction has proved wrong. Xi Jinping's top-down reform program aims at a sort of Leninist capitalism, in which the economy will be driven more by market efficiency, while the party's power will be strengthened, not weakened. There are several reasons to think this strategy could be effective, at least for the next few years. First, the acquiescence of the governed appears to remain relatively high. China is a large country, and many people have many grievances about inequality, corruption, pollution, expropriation of land, and so on. But such discontent is natural in any fast-changing society. As we saw in Chapter 11, surveys suggest that the large majority of Chinese remain satisfied with the country's direction, and their discontent is largely directed at the abuses of local officials, not at the system as a whole. Second, the party does not simply crush dissent. It also makes a real effort to address the underlying material causes of discontent. Many elements of Xi's reform program, if successfully implemented, may address some of the most serious causes of social unrest. The anti-corruption campaign could constrain the rapacity of local officials. The drive for industrial efficiency and changes in the tax system may drive many polluting factories out of business and make it more cost-effective for the remaining plants to install pollution abatement equipment. Deregulation of state-dominated sectors could open up more opportunities for private entrepreneurs. If it succeeds, Xi's economic reform program will enhance the party's legitimacy by showing that it is capable of delivering difficult changes that are beneficial not just to a narrow elite, but to a broad majority of people. Admittedly, there are a lot of ifs in this prognosis. 那实际上情况你也知道啊，这些并没有成功，就是想法很好，但是现实很骨感。Third, the natural class advocate of a more open political system is not obviously interested in change. The urban middle class is generally seen as the group that pushes hardest for political openness. This group has been growing fast in China, but it is still a minority. At the very outside, it might comprise 300 million people, or less than a quarter of the population. On the whole, members of this group have benefited disproportionately from economic reforms, notably through the privatization of state-owned housing, which gave them a valuable tax-free asset, and through the quotas for university admission, which are heavily skewed in favor of urbanites. In a more representative system, the interests of this group would almost certainly lose out to the interests of poor rural people, who are twice as numerous as the urban middle class. So long as the party continues to deliver the goods in the form of a rising standard of living, not just financial but environmental, expanding opportunities and reasonably secure property rights, the urban middle class is unlikely to agitate for political change. Finally, we ought to question the premise of this whole discussion, namely that China's economy has changed dramatically while its political system has been static. This is not really true. The governance system of 2014 bears little resemblance to that of 1979. Back then, China was literally a land without laws. Mao had dispensed with laws and courts, preferring to rule by decree, and the majority of officials had no qualifications other than obedience to the ruler. The only reliable means by which a new ruler could come to power was for the old one to die. In the intervention of law and regulation that enables a country to be governed, for the most part, in a rational and predictable way, though not always fairly, Officials must demonstrate some kind of competence to be promoted, and the technocratic skills of the upper echelons of the bureaucracy are formidable. Starting in 1993, the party has pulled off 3 successive peaceful transfers of power from one living leader to another. These achievements represent a significant improvement in the system of governance, even if they fall short of the Western ideal of representative democracy or the Chinese ideal of benevolent government. So there is a fair chance that Xi's Leninist capitalism strategy will succeed in sustaining China's unique combination of market economy and authoritarian political system, at least until the end of Xi's term of office in 2022, which doesn't happen. But this strategy is far from cost-free. The obvious victims of this approach are innovation and creativity. Although its leaders often mouth the idea that China must become a more innovative society, it is impossible to imagine creativity blossoming so long as the state places draconian restrictions on the right of people to express their wills, share information, organize independently to solve social problems, challenge authority, and freely collaborate with like-minded people from other countries. In the short run, this lack of innovation need not stifle the economy, since there is plenty of growth yet to be squeezed out from things like industrial efficiency and service sector deregulation. Ultimately, though, a more open and less paranoid political system will be required for Chinese society to remain vibrant as it grows older and richer. OK， 读完啦，下面就是最后一章了，也挺有意思的，有机会再分享给大家。晚安啦。